In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a paper that looks like this and turn it into something that looks like this. Hey, it's Ray here from Impossible Escape, and one of the great things about being an escape room owner is the opportunity to really get creative and do some fun things. And right now we're working on a new room that's going to involve some conspiracy theories. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was to get some newspaper articles that show some conspiracies and use those inside of the game. Well, right here, I grabbed from the Weekly World News. Many of you may remember this lovely tabloid paper. In this case here, Hillary Clinton is fighting with, an alien is fighting with Bill Clinton over Hillary Clinton, which is kind of interesting. Printed this out, got it off of a website there, printed out the article. And what we want to do is we want to make it look like it's an old article that's been sitting around for a while. And so we come up with something like this in the end. And you can see the difference between the two, freshly printed versus something that looks like it's old and sun-stained and whatnot. And I want to show you right now how we do that process to make it go from clean and white to this old nasty looking newspaper. And it's actually done pretty easily with some pretty common items. So we're going to jump into the kitchen to show you what we're doing. Okay, so for our experiment today on turning a fresh looking piece of paper into something that looks old and beat up, starts with something pretty simple that you may already have in your house, and that is instant coffee. Now, you don't necessarily have to have instant coffee. You could use regular coffee. You could also use tea. The other day when I did this particular one, I actually used a fake coffee substitute. But this here, this is Cafe Bustelo. I got this for 99 cents over at the supermarket. So you don't have to buy expensive instant coffee. Just get the cheapest stuff you can. You're not going to drink this stuff. It doesn't matter what it tastes like. All it has to do is be able to stain some paper. And the other thing that you're going to need is an oven. Now in our case here, we've got a toaster oven. Not ideal, especially because of the size, and quite honestly, the paper is almost as big as the hole inside of the oven, but a toaster oven will do. A regular oven will work really well also. And what you want to do is you want to set that oven to about 200 degrees. You don't want it too hot. 200 degrees is just going to warm it up and let that coffee set in and dry that paper out. So what we're going to do is, in this case here, I've got it set to 200 already, and I'm just going to turn on the timer and let that warm up a little bit. And in a few moments, that'll reach the 200 degrees that we need for this. Now, as far as our paper goes, what we want to do actually is going to grab our tray out of here. And I'm also going to grab, in this case, a cutting board. If you've got some sort of a pan, that might work a little better than this. We don't have a lot of stuff here in the kitchen. We're actually at the escape room, so we don't have a lot of different types of kitchen equipment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this cutting board and I'm going to put this into our sink. Now in your case here, if you've got like a big pan that's bigger than the sheet of paper, some sort of baking pan or something like that, you can use that. This one here is actually smaller than the paper, so I can't use that for this particular purpose. But what we want to do now is we want to take our instant coffee and we're going to put that into a cup, and we're going to use that on our paper. Now in this case here, these actually come with little packets here. Not sure how much is in that little packet, but we're going to take our little coffee mug here and we're going to open up the packet. We're just going to pour that into here because it is instant coffee. Again, if you're using regular coffee, which you certainly can do, you can actually just pour it right out of your pot and put it into your mug or whatever you're going to use to transfer it over to the paper. And so I'm just going to pour the grinds in here, and I'm going to save some of them, and I'll show you why in a minute. So get a bunch of them in there, leave a little bit in the packet, and we'll show you why in a moment. And so now I'm just going to get some hot water here. Oh, actually, let me move this out of the way for one moment. Turn on our water here. You want this to be hot so that it dissolves it pretty quickly. But even cold water is probably going to work perfectly fine for this as well. I'll just wait for it to warm up just a second here. All right. And like I said, if you've already got a pot of coffee on that's hot, that's going to work just as well. So I'm going to fill that up probably like halfway, and I'll actually grab a spoon or a knife. either way. And I'm just going to stir that up nice and good in there so that we have a nice coffee. And this may actually work really well with this one because this is actually not instant coffee. It's actually espresso, so maybe even darker than regular coffee would be. So there we go. Mix that up a little bit. And so now what we want to do is we're going to put our cutting board back in here, and we're just going to take our piece of paper. We're just going to lay that in here, just like so. And now we're going to take our coffee, and we're just going to put that onto this paper. We'll just kind of spread it around a little bit. Now don't worry if you think that, oh, this is going to dissolve your paper. It's really not. Your paper will be fine. Just pour that on there. Have some fun with it, something like that. Okay, and you can see it's kind of in some places and not in others, and that's good because that's going to give you some of the, the darker parts and the highlights and whatnot. And so now, remember I told you to save some of those grounds. What we're going to do is we're actually going to use those to add onto here to make some darker spots. Just kind of pour it into a few locations on there. Some of those that are nice and thick are really going to get dark. Okay, that might be too dark, so we'll spread that out just a little bit until you get something the consistency like this. Now you may want to, so it doesn't get spotty, you may want to kind of mix it a little bit so you don't get just weird spots on there. But that's going to give us some of the dark areas, some of the light areas. And now what we want to do is we're just going to let this sit for a little while. So while this sits, we'll pause the video and then we'll come back in just a little bit. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes or so. I've let this sit like this. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to just get that nasty coffee water off of this sucker just by gently picking it up, shaking it off a little bit. And then we're going to put this onto our tray. Again, if you've got a real oven, it'll fit much better. In our case here, not going to quite fit on that tray, but that's quite all right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this and we're going to put this into our toaster oven, which is just over here. Let's move our coffee cup out of the way. And we'll head on over to the oven, which has been heating up to 200 degrees for a while now. So it should be warm, but not super hot. I'm going to stick that in there. And I'm going to close that down, and we're going to let that run for a few minutes. And probably about, 5 to 10 minutes. We'll take a look at it after that, and we'll see what kind of results we get. All right, let's open her up and take a look here. Be a little careful. Okay, well, there we go. Look at that. We've got a nice little super dark spot there. Not too bad. Okay, so there you go. That's how you can take an original print, something like this, right off of your printer and turn it into something that looks aged and sun-worn and rotted up and everything else just like this. Now, I do want to point one thing out. When we did this particular experiment, the one thing we didn't do that we did do with this one here is we actually crumpled this one up first and then put the coffee on this, whereas this, we actually did it flat, and I did that specifically so I could see if there was a major difference. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't see much of a difference between the two. They look very, very similar. Even though this one was crumpled up and this one was not, they really don't look any different as far as that goes because the heat tends to add that same crumpled effect to it. So that's something you can choose to do or not, and it doesn't seem to make a huge difference with that. But if you got a little bit of coffee around and you've got some pictures and you want to make them look aged, this is a great way to do it very simply and very easily. And we hope that you have fun doing this for whatever it is you're putting together, whether it's a stage presentation or some sort of spooky Halloween thing or an escape room. You can do this very quickly and easily, and it's a little bit of fun as well, and doesn't take a whole lot of effort, and it definitely doesn't take a whole lot of money. So try it out.